Hey, everybody, it's January 10th. That means that we are reading John chapter 9 today. John chapter 9, the whole chapter is about the complete story of Jesus healing the blind person or the blind man. Maybe a familiar story to you, but there's a couple of things as I read through this today that really kind of stuck out to me, and it's kind of what I want to kind of just talk about. So when we look at this story, we can first see in the first couple of verses a couple of things. That one, Jesus tells us that his blindness is not because of the result of sin. And that's important because there are still plenty of people today. There are some denominations and some religious groups of people that still think that because of somebody's disability, that means there's sin in their life, whether it's a disability they're born with, maybe it's a disability that they pick up later, or maybe it's even as simple as a reason why somebody cannot get pregnant. But we can see here from Scripture, and not only in this place, many other places, but that a disability or something that the world looks as a disability is not because of sin. Sin is sin. Sin is an eternal factor. Sometimes sin has a physical consequence, but somebody that is born with a disability is not because of their sin or their parents' sin. The second part of that statement by Jesus is that the disability is not because of sin or the parent's sin, but notice what he says. He says is because so that God might be displayed. And what an amazing thought, right? As really, as a person on this earth, if you really think about it, we all have some form of disability. Just sometimes people are more prevalent or more noticeable than others. But notice what Jesus says, that this blind man has this disability so that God might be displayed. What if we thought about our disabilities, or maybe when we see somebody in public, or maybe that family member that has a disability, man, God could really use that. I know even with Taylor, with being a type 1 diabetic, God will be able to use that. That's not the report that we wanted. That's not what we wanted for our son. We did not want a life-altering disease that could ultimately kill him. But God can use that, and God will use that mightily. Maybe he might be the first diabetic rock climbing kid who does whatever, we don't know, but God can use our most weakest point in our life to something to his greatest ability. And so this is something that kind of stuck out to me. But as you keep reading the story, I also noticed that people didn't realize that it was him, right? They said, that kind of looks like the guy that was blind. And he's saying, no, it's me. I was blind. And they're kind of like, nah, that's not him. The guy that changed, the blind man that was healed, when Jesus came into his life, it was changed. But the world would not give him that validation. The world would not encourage him on his change. They just kind of ignored him and put it off. And that's so true in our spiritual life. God can do some amazing things in our life, whether it's a salvation, whether that's on church on Sunday, whether that's reading in the Bible and God does something. The world is never really going to affirm that. It's not their job to do that. It's the Spirit's job to affirm that, and you find that affirmation in God. Another thing that just kind of picked up on me was that, that they didn't really care. These Pharisees, these Jewish leaders, did not care about the miracle. They cared about their man-made laws. And they got mad because this happened on a Sabbath, right? It happened on a day where their man-made laws said that they couldn't do much work. And they didn't care that it improved this guy's life, that this guy would now be able to be married. He'll be able to get a job. He'll be able to buy a house. He'll be able to provide for himself. He'll no longer have to beg. They didn't care anything about that. All they cared about was their religious laws, their own little kind of church structure. And that's who I never want to be. That's who we are never going to be at Green Acres. We will always put God's work and God's blessing in front of our little church rules and our laws and our regulations. Some are important, but God's work is always the most important, and we never want to forget that. But notice as you keep reading through this story, they even call the boy's parents and they say, "Is this the boy?" And the parents say, "Yeah, this is our son. And yes, he was born blind, but we don't know what happened. Just go ask him." Even his parents didn't want to affirm the miracle that had happened, his life change that happened. And sometimes that happens in our life, right? Our spiritual ventures are not of our parents, they're not of our grandparents, they're not of our kids, they're of our own. Our salvation is of ourselves. We need no affirmation from anybody else other than from the Spirit and from God. And so those are the things that I picked up on. And maybe you picked up on a lot of different things, but I'm so glad that we're doing this. As we're reading through John, I hope God is illuminating things. Don't forget that our prayer focus of today is to pray for the visitors that are in our service. Be praying for those visitors that are coming. Be praying for the lost people that are in our service, that they may hear the gospel and that they may come forward, just like this blind man, a disability of sin, but to give it all away and to completely be transformed from death unto life. That's what we're praying for. Guys, I hope you're enjoying this, and we're going to see you again tomorrow. God bless.